welcome to my acrylic colour blocking workshop. In this workshop I'm going to teach you how to colour block to create different designs with coloured acrylic, and also how to do the reverse French smile line. I really hope you enjoy this workshop, so let's get started. So colour blocking. Now this can be used in a variety of different ways to create a variety of different designs, but the technique remains the same. So I have prepared my tip, and it is just literally a bare naked tip. Now obviously if we were going to be doing this on a client, if we were doing an enhancement, we will have put our form on and sculpted out a clear base. So for example, if their nail finished here, if their natural nail finished here, we would have sculpted out this extra length in a really thin layer of clear. Now the reason we do that is because coloured powders in acrylic are not strength powders, so we need to add that strength in with our clear to be able to give a base for us to be able to work on. Alternatively, if you use tips and you don't sculpt, then you will have tipped the nail, obviously prepared the nail and blended in your tip, so you've got that base to be able to work on. So I'm just going to run through the colours that I'm going to be using. Obviously you can use whichever products and colours that you use and that you're used to, but this is from the Acrylic Genesis range, and this is a purple and it is called Aster. And then we have got, again from the Genesis range from Acrylic, we have got Bluebell, which is obviously blue, and then again from the Genesis range we have got Beard Tongue, which is like a dusky pink sort of colour. Okay, so what I will say is that colour powders are not your strength powders. They are literally just for colour, so we will need to cap this nail afterwards in our clear to be able to put the structure of the nail in. So it's really important that you get your bead control correct and that you work really nice and thinly with your colour and your colour blocking, so that we don't add any extra depth to the nail that we don't need, because it's our clear capping that is going to add our structure of our nail into the nail. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my monomer. So this is a Professional Speed liquid, again from the Genesis collection from Acrylic, and I'm just used to this liquid. If you want to use a medium speed, then obviously you can, that's entirely up to you, but make sure as well that you practice your bead control before you do this, so that you know your environment and the humidity and the temperature and how it's going to affect your bead, because the control of your product is so important with regards to colour blocking. Now I'm using my Acrylic A8 brush. This is my acrylic brush, okay, and it is nice and tapered, so it's perfect for colour blocking. So I'm just going to grab my tip, and this is just going to be a really simple colour block technique that you can use. So I'm using my 3 different colours to create definition, and this is one of the processes that you have to trust the process. You have to be confident that it's not going to look how you want it to look, but you need to be able to see past that at the end stage and know that it's going to turn out okay. So I'm just going into my monomer and I'm going to pick up a bead of my product, and I'm just going to pop it down where the cuticle line would be. Okay, and I'm just going to pop that bead on, and I'm just going to leave it to settle. Now what I want to create here is like a triangle. So obviously if this was on a client, we would be very aware of not touching their cuticle area or the skin with our product, and we're going to create a triangle down at the base of the nail. Now what you want to do is you want to work quite thinly, but you almost want to build a wall, so you've got that vertical line against your product. So I'm just going to flatten it out. You don't want to taper this out, you want to flatten that side. And the reason for this is because we're going to go in with our next colour, and you want to keep a nice crisp line between your colours. So the whole time I'm just pushing that product back up onto itself and then flattening it out, making sure that we've got a nice crisp point, using our brush just to push that product and make sure it's exactly where we want it to be. So you can see from the side we've got a really nice sharp line, or wall if you like, coming from the base of the nail upwards. And you need to keep moving that product back where you want it so you don't lose that definition. Just push the product and then pat it down to make it nice and flat. You don't have to worry too much about that top section, because we are going to be going in and filing this afterwards, but you just need to concentrate on that edge there, making sure it's nice and crisp. Now what we can do, but it does add time onto your treatment, is you can go in and wait for this to set up. So obviously you would go in and do the other 9 nails if they're having colour blocking on those, and you can go in and actually file this edge so it's super crisp. So I'm just going to wait for that to set up just for a little bit, and then I will show you that process. Okay, so my triangle has now set because I've done the tap test and it's a nice clear tap. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in with a nail file and I'm just going to show you this process. So I'm going to go in at a 90-degree angle, making sure it's nice and straight against the nail, okay? You don't want to be going in at an angle like this or over too far. You need to go in at a nice and straight angle, and you can actually file that edge so that it makes it even more crisp. And for this design, this is a really good way of making sure that you get really crisp lines. So I'm just going to dust that off. So you guys can now see that that wall that we've built is really nice and crisp and straight, okay? It's not straight from the top because that's fine, we're going to sort that out in a second, but it is straight from the side, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to create like a chevron pattern. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in this side next, and I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use my blue, and I'm going to build a wall again. So I'm going to butt my product up against the product that we've just put on there. I'm going to let it settle, and again remembering that this area would be our cuticle line area. So we need to make sure that that doesn't touch our client's skin. And I am going to bring that up, but I want it to be in line with this line of our triangle. So it needs to come out to here. So I'm just going to push that product where I want it. Not worrying about my wall just yet. And now I'm going to come in and straighten up my lines to create that wall that I can then go in and file. So again, just using my brush, pushing that product exactly where I want it. Making sure it's nice and crisp. Now you could go in and file this at every stage, but if you've got your product control correct, you really don't need to. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do my second line in my third colour, and this is going to go this side of my triangle and in line with this line here. Okay, so again I'm going to pop my acrylic on, let it do its thing, let it settle and then push my product where I want it. And then making sure it's in line here. So I need to bring this out slightly more and then tap the top. And again, making sure that our lines are the same width and we're building that wall of product. Just tapping that out so it's nice and flat. So it's at this stage that you need to trust the process, because we're going to start to lose the definition in our lines because we're building up product. Don't panic. If you have built your walls correctly, this will not be a problem when we come to file. And that's what I mean by trusting the process. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my original pink, and I'm going to go onto this side. And again, obviously each time we do this, your bead needs to be slightly bigger because we're covering more surface area. So now I'm going to pull that product where I want it to go and push it up against the product that I've previously laid down. And then tap out the top. And making sure that that's nice and straight against this line here. Again, building that wall, making sure it's nice and straight. Now I'm going to continue this process all the way up to the end of the nail. So I'm not going to make you sit through that. So by the power of technology, I'll be back in a minute and I will have completed this entire nail. Okay, so I've continued the pattern up the nail, and this is what we have ended up with. So like I said, this process, you really need to trust it, because as you can see, it looks really, really messy. But now I'm going to go in and file. So, providing that you have built your walls correctly, the filing will reveal the design. So I'm just going to start on my side walls. I'm actually going to take this off of there because it's much easier to file without it being on the stand. So I'm just going to go down my side walls. Obviously, if this was on a client, we would be aware of their skin and not catching that. And this is where you will start to see your lines appear. Can you see there? Our lines are starting to appear. Which is what we want. So I'm just going to tidy up what would be our free edge. And I'm going to come down my other side wall. Now this is my filing routine. If you've got a different filing routine, then by all means do your filing routine, but this is just the routine that I always follow. And then I'm going to go across the cuticle. So obviously if this was on a client, we would be going in at this angle, but it's much easier for me to hold the tip at this angle. And you'll start to see those lines pop out from that colour block. Okay, so that's my side walls and my cuticle area all filed in. And now I'm going to start working up the nail. I'm just going to tidy this up. And what we want to do is, because we're not building in an apex just yet, because we're going to do that with our clear, you want to make this nice and even and flat all the way up the nail. So again, just going over the nail to reveal those chevrons. Okay, and now I'm going to do the other side. I'm just going to dust that off because it's at this stage that you want to check that you're getting those clear lines form in that nail. So you can see we've got them down this side and we've got them down this side, but this center area needs a little bit more work. So I'm just going to go in and do that. And also looking down the barrel of the nail, making sure that it's all nice and even across the entirety of the nail. We don't want any lumps or bumps in there because when we come to cap it, that will show. So we need to make sure that it's really nice and even over the whole surface of the nail. So again, I'm just going to dust that off and tidy up my edges. Looking down the barrel of the nail, making sure again that there's no lumps or bumps that we don't want. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go over with my white block butter, just to remove any of those really prominent scratches. And that will also help you to see if there's any lines that need refining by more filing. It will pick those out for you. And you can go back in and do that, and then go back in with your buffer. So I'm just going to pop this back on its stand. And give it a dust off. So you can see that has now revealed our lines, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. Okay, so now what we would do, if we were obviously doing this on a client, we would be capping this with our clear, and we would be putting the structure of the nail into the nails. So we would be putting our apex in, we would cap the whole thing, making sure that our free edge and our side walls are correct to be able to put that structure in for our client. But because this is on a tip, I'm not going to cap it, but it is so important that if you are doing this on a client, that you cap it with your clear, because it's that is going to give the strength to the nail. So I'm just going to go in now with my no wipe top coat. So this is shiny top coat, and you will see how those lines have gone from being really unsightly and lumpy to nice and crisp. And I'm going to pop that in the lamp for a full cure. Okay, so that has now fully cured, and you can see we've got a really nice shine on there, and we have revealed our colour block with our acrylic. So that's a really simple colour block, and you can do that in any shape, any formation that you want to do. It's entirely up to you, but it's just so important that you build those walls to be able to get that nice crisp line. Okay, so I'm now going to show you how to do a reverse French. So again, I'm going to be using the Genesis Core Powder from the Nailchemy range in Blossom, because this is a full cover powder, and it will enable us to be able to extend the nail bed to where we want it to be rather than where it is. And I'm also using the Genesis Acrylic in Lily, which is the white. So like before, if we were sculpting and for example if they're now finished here, we would sculpt out a really thin layer of clear to be able to give us that enhancement length. If we were using tips, we would have tipped our client and then blended that tip in so that we've got a nice flush surface to be able to apply our acrylic onto. So the first thing I'm going to do is go in with my cover pink, and I'm going to create the smile line. So I'm going to go into my monomer and pick up a bead, And we want it to be quite a substantial bead because we want to be able to create that wall to be able to create the smile line. So I'm picking up my bead and I'm going to pop it down at a reverse angle. So I'm not coming in at this angle, I'm coming in at a reverse angle because the curvature of that bead is going to be the curvature of our smile line at its highest point. So now what I'm going to do, once I've let that bead settle out, I'm just going to push it down towards my side walls. I'm just letting the bead do what it wants to do on this section. And we need to make sure that both points of where our smile line will be are even. So looking at our nail, this point is here. If we draw an imaginary line across the nail, the other point is here. So they're nice and even. So I'm just going to pat that bead out, and I'm tapering it as I'm patting down into that back section. So I'm just tapping it out, letting it do what it wants to do, and now I'm going to go in and just build that wall and refine that smile line. Now obviously, depending on client choice and what you naturally do as a smile line, it's entirely up to you how dramatic you go. And you can also do this as a chevron, so you could do it as a pointed smile line. But I'm just doing quite a soft, it's not too dramatic, it's somewhere in between a nice soft rounded smile line. So I've tidied that up and I've just patted out that excess. So I haven't built in my wall just yet. I have at the highest point, but not at the lowest point of the smile line. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go in and pick up another bead, and I'm going to do exactly the same, but this bead is going to help me to build that wall. So again, I'm going in reverse, and I'm going to push that bead down, keeping the main bulk of the thickness on that smile line edge, and push it down to the other side, and then tapping it out. And as I'm tapping it out, I'm tapering it. So if I show you from the side, you can see how much I've tapered that down into that back end of the nail. So the whole time just working that bead, putting it where we want it, and then we are going to come in and help to build that wall. But we want to concentrate it on the points of our smile line rather than up at the highest point. We want to concentrate it down onto the lowest points. Again, tapping it out, controlling that bead the whole time, and making sure it's exactly where we want it to be. Okay, so if I just show you from the side, we've built that wall. All right, and now we have also tapered it down this way. And the reason we've tapered it is because we want to add in our back third bead, whereas normally we would either be working this way or that way. We've started in the middle, so it's slightly round the wrong way to what we're used to, but it's necessary to get that smile line in. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just overlapping that slightly, and I'm going to go down each side and then taper it out, down each side, taper it out, so there's no hard lines between our beads. Using a cover pink, you need to make sure that there's no hard lines, otherwise you will see them. even though the colour is the same, you will get that difference in product and it will show in your bead application. So I'm just tapping that out, tapering it, pulling it down where I want it to be. So again, if I show you, I have tapered that product down. Now, because this is core powder and we don't need to cap it with our crystal or our clear, we are also building in the structure of our nail. So obviously, dependent on the length of your tip, or your enhancement I should say, is also dependent on where we put our apex. So I'm just tapping that out, tapering it down into my side walls, and also obviously if there was a cuticle line here, we would be tapering that as well. So I'm just making sure that that's nice and even. Now, if I was doing this on a client, I would leave it at this stage, not do my white, and move on to the next nail. Because what we want to do is we want to file in this smile line to make sure that it's super crisp. So at the moment, the top edge of this smile line is slightly rounded. We don't want that. We want it to be straight. We want it to be really nice and crisp, so that when we come to put our white in, it's a really nice crisp smile line. So I'm going to leave that to set up, and I'm just going to wait a few minutes and wait for that to set, and then I'll be back to show you how to file that in and apply your white to be able to create that smile. Okay, so our reverse pink has now set. So like I said, if we were doing this on a client, we would have moved on to all of the other nails and done that, and got to this stage on all of them. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in with my file at a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to file that wall in. Now, when you're doing a reverse French, it is so important that you do this. And the reason is because you want to make that wall super crisp, so that when we go in with our whites, you've got a really nice crisp smile line. And that is also why it's so important that if we're sculpting, we sculpt out this clear, because that's what's going to help to hold the form in place. If we don't sculpt out a really thin clear layer, our form would be moving all over the place now while we're filing. Which obviously, if we put a form on, you're never going to get it back in exactly the same place if that form moves. So that clear layer is going to hold that form exactly where we want it. I'm just going to take it off the stand. So I'm just going in, filing in that smile line. So if I show you from the side, you can see, if I put it on the back of my glove, hopefully you'll be able to see. That we've got a really nice straight, crisp smile there, or wall, should I say. So you need to make sure that that's nice and even all the way round, so we haven't got any dents or divots in our smile line. So it needs to be flat all the way round. And not changing the angle of that file, it needs to be at that 90-degree angle. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in with a slightly finer file, again at the same angle, and what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that there's no scratches, because any harsh scratches in that wall is going to make, depending on how much we file down, is going to create a distortion in our smile line, which we don't want when we put the white on. So making sure it's nice and flat and even all the way round. Okay, just got a little bit of blue tack there. So I'm just going to pop it back onto its stand, and now I'm going to get my white. So I'm just going to check that that's nice and even from all angles. So if this was on a client's hand, I'd get them to turn their hand around that way so I can make sure that it's all nice and proportionate and where I want it to be. So again, I'm using the white from the Genesis range, and I'm just going to go over that wall and just wet it back up again. And now I'm going to go in with my white powder. So I'm going to pick up my bead, got a little bit of fluff in there that I want to get rid of, and I'm going to pop my bead down right up against that wall, and then I'm going to push it down to where I want it to be, all the way down. Making sure I push it up against that wall, because we don't want any gaps whatsoever, because it will show when we come to file. And I'm just going to pull that bead down into our free edge and just smooth it out. Okay, and I'm going to do exactly the same again, but I'm going to pop it on my free edge and then taper that back up. So like we did with our pink, I'm just tapering that back up, and we can go over the pink. It's not a problem at all, because we are going to be filing this into shape, but obviously be mindful that we don't want to have to do too much filing, so you don't want to put too much product on there that you're just going to remove anyway. So I'm just tapping that out, making sure that it's nice and even on my free edge, looking down the barrel, and now I'm just going to crisp up what I call the bunny ears. So I'm just going to pop another bead in there, just making sure that I've covered all my bases, because the last thing you want is to go in and start filing and your smile line not be complete. So obviously if we were working on a client, this would be going down into their side walls. So you want to make sure that you're not making any contact with their skin, because that will cause overexposure and a possible allergic reaction, which we don't want. So I'm just tapping that out and feathering it out to my free edge. And I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. Pulling up over that pink, because we can, and then tapping that out and then feathering it down into our white. And the reason I feather it down is because we don't want any discrepancies between our colour, and whites can tend to show those, so we just feather it out so that we know that that's going to be a nice even consistent colour all the way through our white. Okay, so I'm going to leave that set up. I'm just going to pop a tiny little bead there as well, just to cover all my bases. I'm going to leave that to set up, and then we will come back and it will be ready to file. Okay, so this has now set up because we have got a nice clear consistent tap throughout the entirety of the nail. So hopefully you guys have watched my filing routine. So I'm just going to start on my free edge and side wall. We'll make this one a ballerina. Now your filing routine is entirely down to you, but this is the filing routine I always use. So I'm just going in and tidying up my free edge, okay, and then I'm going to go in and do my side walls. And you can see that smile line is starting to pop out straight away. Okay, so then I'm going to go down, I'm going to take up the stand, I'm going to go down my other side wall and taper that down and in, making sure it's nice and flush, just checking down the barrel of the nail, making sure that it's nice and even both sides. If it's not, go in and refine it. And then I'm gonna, obviously if this was on a client we wouldn't be removing blue tack, but I'm just going to get rid of that out of my way because it's sticking to my glove because it's nice and warm. So now I'm going to just scooch over my cuticle area and marry up my two side walls. Okay, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to file in that smile line. So I'm going to go over my pink, and then bring it out into that smile. And this is where it really starts to pop. You can see there we've got a really nice crisp line because we made sure that that wall was really nice and flat. So you can see we've got a really nice crisp line there. And just carry on going over that smile line. And then carrying on down through our white. Making sure it's nice and even right out to our free edge. And because this is a core powder, we do not have to cap it in clear. So we do not have to encapsulate this because we've built strength in to our nail with our pink and our white. Now obviously if you're using powders that are not core powders, you would have to cap this. But from the Genesis range, the pink and the white are core strength powders, so we don't have to worry. So it eliminates that step, which obviously helps to speed up our treatment times. Okay, so I'm now just gonna go in and tidy up and file in the rest of the nail. Again, working my way down. Obviously, if we were on a client, we wouldn't be working from this angle, but it's just so much easier for me to hold the tip at this angle rather than if the angle that we would be doing a client. So I'm just going to look down the barrel of the nail, make sure there's no unwanted lumps and bumps, making sure it's nice and even. So I've just got a little bit of a lump here that I need to get rid of, you can see there. But you also, as much as we want to file in that smile line and bring it out, you don't want to over file. You don't want to lose that density of the pink or the white at any point in that smile line. And that's why when we applied our acrylic, we made sure that it was really nice and butted up against that smile line so that we didn't get any gaps and we didn't get any shadowing. So that's the last thing you want, and it's not until you get to this stage that you would see that. And at this stage, it's too late. Again, I'm just refining that shape, making sure there's no nicks or grooves or divots or anything in there that we don't want. Checking the nail from all angles, making sure, there's a bit of blue tack there, making sure that it's nice and even. Again, tidying up any areas that we need to tidy up. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go in with my white block buffer just to buff out any of those unsightly scratch marks. And now I'm going to go in with my finer buffer again, making sure that we've got rid of any unsightly scratch marks on there, because we don't want that. And it's here at this stage that when we go over with our buffer that we can check our line of light as well, just as a preliminary check before we go in with our top coat. So our line of light should travel down from the base, so from the cuticle of the nail, and be nice and even all the way to the tip. If it's not, it shows that we've got a divot, so I've got a divot there, so I need to get rid of that. And sometimes it's really difficult to see until we put that line of light in. Okay, so I'm going to pop this back on the stand so that we can top coat. So I'm just going to dust it off. I'm going to use my No White top coats. This is from Alchemy Essentials range. Okay. And this is going to give us a really nice high shine, but not have to wipe it off. so you can see how crisp that smile line is. By using the reverse French technique. So if I just can see it's nice and even all the way round, and we've got a really nice crisp sharp smile line on there. So I'm going to pop this in the lamp for a full cure, and then I will show you both our colour block and our reverse French smile line together. And there you have it. We have got our French using a cover pink and our white using the reverse technique to create that really nice crisp smile line, and also our colour block. So you can see it's the same technique but just used in a different way to create two completely different looks on a nail, and I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. So that completes my colour blocking with acrylic, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure you click the like button, and if you want to see any future videos, make sure you click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you over in the next workshop.